where we could be going. As an example, let me just come back to this for a second. Actually, I haven't talked about this, but I will for a second. Snapchat has these glasses, right, where you tap them and they record what you're seeing. And by the way, I think one of the reasons why there's so much infatuation with augmented reality and virtual reality these days is because our eyes are so powerful and they're such a huge input mechanism. And so it's like, well, how can we make that even better through the things that computers can do that our eyes can't do? And one of the things that our eyes are bad at is they don't really remember stuff very well, deeply, right? So here you just tap once, it records a 10-second video of exactly what you've seen. So it sort of makes your eyes a bit better. But let's say you record something interesting on these glasses and then you want to send it to somebody. Well, you gotta take out your phone, find the Snapchat app, tap the app, it opens the app, and then you have to tap this thing called memories, where then you will be able to tap this thing called specs, and because it's Snapchat, you have to do this like anti-parents double tap dance, which is created to make sure no adult could actually find what you're really sending between friends. And so you like long press, go like this, and then it opens up the sharing menu. And then once you're actually in there, you also have to double swipe, long press, and then you can finally send that video to a human. And when I got these glasses, I was like, oh wow, this is so cool. I just press this button, it records everything I'm doing. And then I'm like, oh crap. This is like the exact opposite, right? And why is there such a contrast between the simplicity of the hardware and the pain of the software? And I think it stems from, the way we've been making these things. Because when we go and make something like this, especially when we have big screens, it's like, oh, should we add this thing? Yeah, why not? Just squeeze it right underneath there. Yeah, okay, let me kind of shuffle it around. Okay, it looks okay. Oh crap, we got to add more. Redesign time. Okay, good. Add this. Okay, looks good again. And so there's this mindset that we just add stuff and kind of arrange the buttons okay, and we're done. And that is what software and product design is. Like add a thing, move things around to look okay, move on to the next thing to add. Whereas when you deal with stuff like mobile, right, there's, I think, a harder job. And again, I don't mean to trivialize design of software and websites because I did it for years, and I still do it. But I think there's just a little bit of a higher bar when you're dealing with the realities of mobile devices. And I really appreciate that. For example, here's an illustration of this. If somebody sends you a message, what's your address? There is actually a subset of information or a series of actions that you can put here that are very helpful in that specific situation. What's your address? Here's my work address. Here's my home address. And the hard part is knowing what is the right time and place to surface these actions. You have to make these decisions. You actually have to understand workflows. You have to understand the scenarios, and that's hard. That's a lot harder than being like, here's everything we do. You pick, right? That's an easier process, I contend, because I've done it a bunch. So here's everything. I'll shove all this behind this little 3-dot menu and this behind the 3-line menu. And you're done. Another example. On the Android side, somebody sends you text you to understand, we pop up this little translate button, and right there in context you can hear that, you can do a translation, you can read it, you can respond back, right? So it's this right time and place. When I start talking about examples like this, what I always hear from people is like, yeah, well that works for a simple thing, but I work on complex things. So I can't really do that. And my response is everything's freaking complicated, right? Eating is complicated. Do you know how complicated eating is? When you put food in your mouth, do you have any idea all the crazy processes that go through to turn it into nourishment, energy, and poop? It's crazy complicated, but what do you do as a human? You just go, right? So I fully believe things are complicated, but that doesn't mean the interaction with those complicated things has to be complicated, right? And at the very least, even if you can't get it to be that simple, it can't hurt to try it, right? Can't hurt to work as hard as you possibly can to get it to be that simple. Maybe you'll learn some things along the way. Maybe you'll find an easier way of doing stuff. Maybe you'll challenge some things that frankly have just sat around there and everybody's been copying for a while. And the reason why I think it's really important to push hard, if you look at the reality of how people use mobile devices are lots of short, bursty sessions, as opposed to other form factors where they're kind of longer, more sustained sessions. In fact, Apple's official number for how often people unlock their iPhones is about 80 times a day. Android numbers are a little bit different depending on where you look, but we can say roughly 70, 80 times a day people are unlocking and looking at their screen. Average 8 hours of sleep, roughly. Worldwide, it's something like 8.3. In the US, it's 8.8. But you can say every 12 waking minutes or so, there's an unlock somewhere there. Right? It's not all at once, but for every 12 waking minutes, somebody's staring at their phone. That's a lot of times staring at your phone. Not only that, when you look at how long people stare at it, most of the sessions are quite short. Over half of them are for 30 seconds or less. So you're looking at this thing, every 12 minutes, 80 times a day. Most of the times it's less than 30 seconds. You know what's going to really suck? Sitting around and waiting for stuff to load. People hate waiting for things on mobile. They hate it more than encountering unplayable videos. By a lot. And encountering unplayable videos sucks pretty bad, right? Look at how much worse it sucks for slow things. There was a study done by Ericsson where they looked at what causes stress, right? And they measured it by how much cognitive load situations create. Turns out waiting in line at a retail store causes stress. So good job, Amazon. No lines, no checkout. They're onto something here. Watching a melodramatic TV show, pretty stressful. Will she marry him? I don't know. And here's a dragon, oh crap, like that sort of TV show. Standing at the edge of a virtual cliff. I think they include this because VR is a thing, so it turns out pretty stressful. Now, the next one is intended to stress you out, watching a horror movie. If this wasn't stressful, then people making horror movies would not be doing a very good job. All right, but pretty stressful. Watch a horror movie, you're stressed out. What is more stressful than watching a horror movie? Mobile delays. And at first you think, that's impossible. But then you think, 80 times a day, right, for an average of 30 times a day, how many times are you hit with that? And the reason why I really believe in this study, because the only thing more stressful than experiencing mobile delays was solving a math problem. So I'm like, okay, that's legit, right? This is real data, I can believe. So this is why I think it's important to really try. We don't paint the context, the human context around these devices enough. Right? When you think about the scale that we're operating at here, I'm just going to remind you of some of the numbers I showed at the beginning. We have 3 billion of these things active on a planet of about 7.6 billion people. Those 3 billion people, right, half of our population, are looking at this thing almost every 12 waking minutes. And they're doing so for 30 seconds or less. Think about just the scale of impact that you have there. So if you make something a little bit better, right? And there is one place actually where things are even more intense. This is a different study that found similar kinds of things. Here we're looking at average interaction time, and what they did is they pinned cameras on people and watched what devices they looked at. And they found here, last time I said more than half the sessions are about 30 seconds or less. Here they found the average time was about 40 seconds. It's pretty similar. But they also looked at people looking at smartwatches. And if you think it's bad on the smartphone, the average time people looked at a smartwatch was only about 7 seconds. And so designing for this kind of environment is almost more extreme than designing for this environment. And so I'm just really interested in seeing, like, how do they adapt products to make them work in this sort of space. Before, in the Apple Workouts app, you had to explicitly save a workout or discard a workout. Now they just do the work for you. Done. Saved. You can get rid of it later if you want. Right? No need to tap a button or anything. You just look at it. It's done. Another example. Before, they just kind of gave you all the buttons in one order and all the same size. Now when you do workouts, what it actually does is learn from you. It says, oh, last time you did outdoor run, so I'm going to make that first and big and show you what you did. So the interface kind of changes based on how you use it. And this one is actually my favorite example, which seems sort of trivial, but I really like the ability to use what the palette that these types of devices now offer you. And I use the word palette. When I think about the palette of the web, you have like links, images, right? Text. Those are the things you can paint with. When I think about some of these technologies, you have different types of things you can paint with. For example, you have this haptic engine, which does things like tap people. That's now in your palette. And so what happens with this, you get a little tap, feels like this, and you tilt the phone like this, and up pops something that tells you, hey, there's a satellite nearby. And the thing that allows you to paint like that is an accelerometer, which tracks the motion of the device. So you just go like this, and the screen turns on, and that notification shows up right there. So it's like, so far that's all that's happened. There's a magnemeter, digital compass, which sort of knows the direction you're facing and can point to, hey, you're over here, you should be looking over here. And because there's GPS, which is another thing we can paint with, we can actually put you on a map and tell you exactly where this satellite is based on where you're looking. So with just a little tap, move, we can alert you to the fact that there's an object in space moving past you at precisely that moment in time. And I love that this seems trivial and that most people are like, so what? Right? Because when I actually think about all the things that enable this to be possible, it's pretty freaking amazing, right? And so there's things that we can learn from this 7-second thing. Do the work yourself, learn from past behavior, and especially making use of this additional palette of stuff. Right? Because when we start thinking about the capabilities that we have now, then we can go from a world where we have sign out and login, but maybe we don't even need those traditional mechanisms for login anymore. Can we do login without the login form? That's pretty exciting. This is very exciting for me. Right? What about, can we do checkout without the checkout form? Or maybe it ends up looking something like this. I don't know. These natural user interfaces, I see them popping up more and more. It's very encouraging. If you've ever driven a Tesla, what you do is you walk up to the car, and if the key's in your back pocket or your backpack, whatever, it doesn't matter. You just sort of walk up to it, and the handle slides open. It's like, hey, all right, literally right as you walk up, handle slides out, you just open it and go in. Hi, boss, right? Versus, you know what you do with most other cars? Like, find the key and go, beep, beep, and the car's like, doop, doop. You have to like communicate in its language. Okay. We cool? We cool. Okay.
But that's only the front seat.
It's only the front seat. Actually, it works on all sides. Nice example though, right? Again, changing sort of the dynamic. Here's another example. The iPad Pro. If you tap the screen with a pencil, what it'll do is open up the Notes app to where you last left off. None of this slide to unlock, find the app, tap the app, find the dock, open the dock. You just sort of touch it, and it comes back to exactly where you left off. Which, by the way, is how paper works. But this is what I'm kind of getting at, this natural user interface sort of modality. You just do what you know how to do, and the technology bends to you. Right? The goal here is to take all this technical complexity as a burden on yourself. Do your best to do all this heavy lifting and the complicated things that we technically should be good at, so people don't have to deal with it. Because frankly, how many doodads, knobs, widgets, gizmos can the average human being deal with?